thank you very much for you and for everybody joining us today. We're here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we have a little bit of construction going on downstairs right below us, so hopefully that's not too much of a problem. I think we'll definitely need to be muted during the conversation. We've got a really exciting topic and some amazing speakers today talking about manufacturing trends. And the speakers we have are from different regions, from different experiences, and I think we're going to learn a lot from their experience. Our first speaker is Corinne Versini, and she's actually come in through Alain Carey, who's based here in the Phoenix metro area, and Corinne is based in the Marseille, France area. She has been involved with innovation and manufacturing in Europe. She's the founder and CEO of Jeans Inc. They do printed electronics, and they work with nanomaterials, and she's really dedicated, after quite an amazing corporate career, on changing lives in a fast-moving field, and she's right in the middle of it. She's worked for Rome Poulenc, IBM, KPMG, ST Microelectronics, nobody you've ever heard of, and of course now Jeans Inc. So Corinne, congratulations on your career, amazing work that you're doing, and we're looking forward to hearing more from you about some of the things you're seeing in Europe.
Okay, so Jeans Inc. is the company that I founded 8 years ago, and we are doing raw materials for printed electronics, because I am convinced that the future of electronics will be light, flexible, and connected. And we work mainly for Internet of Things. All the objects that you can connect, we can make something for them. So we work with a big company like Essilor. I'm sure you know them, because probably your glass are more or less something to see with Essilor. Essilor is the leader on the glass for the glasses, in fact. And we work for them. They want to do connected glass, and probably tomorrow everybody in the world will have connected glass to help them to see, to help them from the driving, to help them for knowing if they are in good health. And so on. So we have been selected for this kind of company, and we are very happy of that. We are also working with a lot of new company, new startup, making a new application in the Internet of Things business segment. And I'm quite sure that tomorrow, the thing that we are predicted for this kind of business segment is very far from what we will see, because this will explode and everything will be connected. So in France, there is also a lot of things that are exploding, because everything is changing in France now. We have a new president. More than 1 year ago, we elected Emmanuel Macron at the head of the country, and everything is changing now. In the past, you knew France more or less because you heard about 35 hours, you heard about strikes and everything like that. And now everything is changing. We have the Brexit. The Brexit is a chance for France, in fact, because a lot of companies working in UK is now coming in France, because the climate in France is good for the business now, and we have a lot of let's say innovative company that are coming in France, because the fields for this innovative company is very good in France. We have what we call the crédit impôt recherche, which is a credit tax. If you make your research in France, you can have the credit from the government to make the research in France. And this is just an example. After you have some incubators, after you can have some development and big funds that are coming in France also to invest in France. And this is shown also by the, let's say the economy is starting, and the growth is starting to be in Europe. The best will be in France now. So I'm happy for that, because I am a fan of Emmanuel Macron, and there is a lot of numbers that now is showing that things are changing in France. What I can say, in fact, on top of that, I don't know, maybe I can wait for the question, because I see that there's two people that are raising a flag. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, no, we're happy to pose some questions for you, Corinne, because we know you also need to leave a little bit early. I guess the first question is regarding Bastille Day. We understand that you were invited by President Macron
Yes.
to be on the parade,
I was.
see the parade. So how does somebody get invited to be on the parade stand, and how was it?
Pardon?
How was the event?
The event was fantastic, you know. Even if we had the color of the flags was inverted in the sky with the flames, but except that, the event was fantastic, and I hope that maybe in November, when you will have in US the same event made by the President Trump, I will be invited also. I hope.
Okay, fantastic. So you mentioned Internet of Things, and so it sounds like you're tapped into that. Tell us about what you see going on with that industry, if you want to call it an industry, or certainly some of the things, some of the doors that IoT is opening up in France and in Europe.
Absolutely. In France, we have a lot of people very skilled in mathematics and this kind of thing. We are very good engineers. So they are able to develop the applications we need to put in the IoT. Because in IoT we have some trouble. Most of the trouble is, in fact, to have enough network to exchange data. And if we can have some reduction of in the data, we can exchange more data. And in fact, a lot of new standard in this area are coming from France. We have LoRa. LoRa is a big association coming in from Europe and mainly in France, working with IBM and so on. And they are making standard for IoT network. And this is, in my opinion, the first thing disappeared 4 years ago, in fact, 5 years ago. And now this is something we are working on. And we are also working on, because we still have some chip manufacturer, we are working on also on the hardware for the IoT. And we are convinced that this will be a big segment that will help France to develop and to increase the country revenue.
Where do you see most of the products coming, and are the products maintaining their manufacture in Europe, or do you see outsourcing happening to other countries, maybe particularly Asia?
I don't think that there is a lot of outsourcing, because in fact this new technology is not a technology that requires a lot of investment and requires a lot of let's say people, and the people's skill are here in France. So I'm convinced that we will have also outsourcing, but this will not be the main trends. The main trends will be to resource again in France, because we have the skill for that, and we have also the support for the government for the research and development.
Could you talk a little bit about the R&D in France? We understand that the government has made it, policy to do some investments in specific areas of technology, even bringing in workers to France. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, the government has decided to put a lot of emphasis on the R&D, and if you do your R&D in France, in fact, you can decrease your tax, because all your R&D will decrease the benefit you have. And if you don't do benefit because you are a startup, the government give you money, which is, it's really a credit tax. And this is to help France to be the first country in the world in the R&D business segment, because we are a lot of people innovative in France, and we want to capitalize on that. We want to rely on them. So we help all the startups when they do R&D, the government in fact fund them.
How does an entrepreneur or how does a company come into France and take advantage of that kind of opportunity?
You just have to have your headquarter or something in, not the headquarter, but an establishment, a facility in France, and to pay some tax in France for the salary or for that. If you have French, not only French, but if you have employees in France, you have the right to access to this credit tax, because you will have a declaration at the end of the year with the employees, with the benefit you have done, and you can remove from the benefit all the R&D charges, not only the personnel, not only the people. You can remove people, investment, and subcontracting if you have. It's very, very a very good, let's say, things from the government to fund the R&D. Everything is taken in charge by the government.
Very good. And then, could you talk a little bit, other than IoT, where do you see some of the future opportunities on the manufacturing side? Certainly robotics, 3D printing, smart manufacturing, and now, coming from the outside, we've got all of these different tariff wars and trade wars going on. I mean, how is technology meeting up with kind of the current reality of the world?
But in fact, we have also all manufacturers that are coming again on the first rank in the world, like automotive. If you look at the Renault, the group, Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi, they are the first in the world, and they are still producing in France. Not only in France, obviously, because they are big groups, but they are still producing in France. We have also another one, which is Peugeot, PSA, which is another group, and automotive is a very old manufacturing industry. So we have both, in fact, and everything is working together, because also due to the fact that the government is helping the industry, making what we call platform. So the government help the industry to make some platform. They give them the facilities, and all the company can be together on this kind of area. They just loan the office, and they can work together. And this is something which help a lot the industry. To give you an example of that, we have a platform here in Marseille for the aeronautic, because we have Airbus helicopter working here close to Marseille, and they have made a platform called Henri Fabre platform, and we work together. Genesis work with them on this platform, making some innovation for them, particularly in coating industry, and we work with them. So aeronautic is also an industry that is growing in France with Airbus, and particularly also, again, because due to the Brexit, probably the UK will lose what they were doing before for Airbus Industries, and all the industry put in UK, if I remember well, I think it's something about motors. All these things will become again in Germany or France, and we will do that for Airbus Industry.
Very good. Appreciate that input, and I know you're going to hang on for a little bit longer. Thank you very much, and great way to kick things off. We're going to now shift back over to the U.S. and Nick, I believe you're calling in from Baltimore. That's where you're based.
Yes.
You're the director of systems at Flagship Global Sourcing. You've got 13 years of international experience, and I've talked to you before, and I've just been very impressed by what you've been doing, what you're doing now. You're very in touch with what's going on with manufacturing all around the world, in particular Asia. And you're going to be talking today about manufacturing in Asia, no matter where your company is based. So thank you for taking the time today, Nick.
Well, thank you for having me. Yep. So basically, we are a international procurement house. We manufacture predominantly in China and Vietnam, but we have done manufacturing elsewhere in the world on a case-by-case basis. But today, I'm going to focus mainly on China and Vietnam. Basically, the long story short is we are in the business of helping businesses put furniture predominantly into their businesses all over the world. So we work with global organizations that want to have their brand, have the same kind of furniture in their facility in Dubai as they do here in the United States or in the UK or in Europe. So not only does my business include the manufacturing side, which we'll focus today, but also the logistics of international shipping and those kinds of things. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of changes in the Asian market. They have become a lot more competitive in the global arena as far as tariffs and those kinds of things. So we are in the furniture business, so we make predominantly tables, chairs, desks, a lot of sofas, those sorts of things. A couple of things that, if you are interested in bringing manufacturing and starting getting into manufacturing of your own products, a couple of things that you'll want to kind of focus your energy in towards is the R&D process and understanding what your manufacturer or your manufacturing partner is capable of doing. For us, using us as an example, we predominantly lean very heavily on our Asian partners for the R&D aspect of it. We provide a lot of the ideas, conceptual drawings, detailed schematics, but they really are very influential in the process of helping identify the correct components and pieces. Unlike other areas of the world, China is very good at compartmentalizing pieces down into very small things. So although we may buy a chair, like the chair you're sitting in, your task chair with wheels, we're buying that from a particular manufacturer that we give very specific guidelines to. They in turn are really going out to multiple sub-manufacturers and sub-distributors and bringing in all of their tools, like the handles and the wheels on the bottom, the casters or the lifts. Those may all be coming from different companies. So understanding who you're working with and what their vast network looks like is very important to being successful in that particular market. One of the other pieces that we have found to be very successful is by manufacturing in China, we can get our prototyping costs down very, very low, and then working on our using technology like we are today, we do a lot of live views. So we'll meet with our manufacturers. I have a few employees in China who travel around and actually visit the factories and look at the items one-off. The other aspect of the thing that is they're willing to do whatever you ask them to do, but they're, the European or US bar is a lot higher than the China bar. So they often are looking at things and saying, well, what is the least expensive? What is the fastest way I can get this done? Versus understanding what like US or European quality looks like, and that we may be willing to add additional time to the manufacturing process to achieve that objective. And really the last item that I just wanted to talk about, and obviously later we can jump into any questions that we have, is understanding the cost implications of manufacturing, particularly if you're a US company manufacturing in China. You really have to do this on a pretty large scale in order to make the economics work of it. We ship in whole containers worth of items, so we don't manufacture anything that can't fill a 20-foot container. But one area that you should particularly look into is in southern China. They have what's called a free trade zone, which basically allows you to manufacture in China. And as long as you are manufacturing in China and you are working through this free trade zone, you can basically export for very little, if anything, other than the cost of particularly moving the items into this area. You can do this through a manufacturing partner. Many of our manufacturers are already set up for global distribution through our contracts, but this is something that can be done relatively easily. I will caution you that it does get a little more complicated when you're doing when you are doing in China transportation. So if you build it in China and sell in China, there's a few VAT regulations that have to be adhered to. For us, we do have some of our customers that are building offices and facilities in China, so we are part of that. But many of the contracts that we have a customer right now in the UK. We manufacture 100% of our goods in China, put it in containers and send it directly into the UK. And we're only paying the VAT on the import side, not on the export side. So that was just, sort of my business in a nutshell. Certainly open to answer any questions after we hear from some of the other presenters, or if you have a particular question now or something.
Appreciate it, Nick, very much. Just one quick question, and then we'll get to the next speaker.
Absolutely.
You talked about lots of changes happening in Asia. So could you be a little bit more specific about what you're seeing there? And then what are the implications for the next 5 or 10 years? How are the markets evolving and changing? I presume that you're manufacturing in China and Vietnam because of cost, but
yes,
also capabilities, and those capabilities are changing.
Sure. So as the global economy is changing, more dollars are going into China, and these companies, really what used to be like a single tier manufacturing system really is now becoming like a 3-tier system. So we look at them as the A, B, and C style manufacturers. And these A manufacturers, these top line guys, are getting very smart. They have actually employed they're beginning to employ even U.S. employees. And some of these companies, with the advent of selling online, have even taken business unto themselves and are now shipping whole containers worth of goods directly into the United States to sell in organizations like Amazon. So it's a very interesting model that they're really adapting to the global economy. The reality is a lot of these people now are in a situation, a lot of these companies are in a situation now where it's much easier for them to do global trade with companies like ours than it was even 5 years ago. The ability to do the wire transfers, the economics of being able to bring things in and out of the country, partial manufacturing is something that has really come to age and certainly will come to be a huge player over the next 5 years. And what I mean by that is building the components in Asia and possibly completing the product in the United States or somewhere else in the world. Fabric is still a huge in our business is still a huge challenge in the Asian market. The fabric quality and the fabric items that are manufactured in China very differently than maybe what's manufactured here in the United States or in the UK. So one big thing is that, unlike having the entire piece built in China or Vietnam, we are investigating, and certainly a lot of other companies are investigating, building things. Just as a tad example, we're making right now part of our components in China, and we're shipping them to Vietnam to be assembled along with some other components that are being made there, and then shipping them out of Vietnam as a cost savings measure and also as a quality measure. As I mentioned, the quality is getting substantially better as more and more U.S. companies like ours are putting boots on the ground, people there to help them understand what U.S. And global companies really are looking for as their product. So
Very good. Thank you. Keep
you're very welcome.
appreciate your membership in Global Chamber. Thank you for your participation and really good information. We do have a number of questions. Keep those coming in, and we should have time to get to those. So hang on a little bit longer, and we'll be able to ask those to the group. Our next speaker is coming in from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Rusan Rahman is CEO of Lux Empire, MPIRE. He's also the Executive Director of Global Chamber in Dhaka. Rusan, you've been involved with us and you've been involved with Global for quite a while. You're going to be talking about manufacturing overall in Asia and in Bangladesh, and give us an overall update of the region. Thank you very much. Uh-oh, he's muted.
Me properly?
There we go. Now we hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, thank you and Cesar and the Global Chamber team for inviting me to this webinar. And okay, so I guess that's the presentation I was meaning to do. And I will be presenting on my country, Bangladesh as a whole, and what we do as a company at Lux Empire. Bangladesh is poised to be a global force in manufacturing capabilities and termed as the emerging Asian tiger of Asia lately. Let us see how and why. Bangladesh is located, as you know, in South Asia, with India on three sides and Myanmar and the Bay of Bengal on the south. The country has recently been promoted to the rank of lower middle income group as per the World Bank classification. We aspire to be a middle income country by 2021 as per UN classification. The country has seen a steady growth of 6% for the past few years, and we envision to reach average growth rate of 8% by the year 2020. The new and promising sectors in the next slide of manufacturing would be agro products and agro processing products, light engineering and products, footwear and leather products, pharmaceuticals, software and ICT, production of construction materials, ocean-going shipbuilding industries, automotive industries, electronic items and products, and jute fabrics mostly. Moving on, you can see that Bangladesh is seeing a stable GDP from manufacturing sources. And then on the next slide, you can also see that Bangladesh is, as it is termed, as the new Asian tiger in parallel to Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, or Taiwan. And Bangladesh roughly invests 30% of its national income, which is in line with the East Asian counterparts. Moving on, you can also see the growth factors, which are very positive due to various reasons like domestic political stability right now, the geopolitical support from major powers like China and India, and it's one of the most fast-paced urban growth and extreme population density as well. In the next two slides, you can see that the GDP contribution Bangladesh has from the current prices in its manufacturing capacity. And on the following slide, you will see that the largest manufacturing sector is the micro industry, which is putting in a lot of effort in the country. Now to my main topic in the next slide, which I'll talk about the Bangladesh's garment industry, which has been the major source of income for the country. And as the largest export source, Bangladesh is the second largest hub of ready-made garments in the world. And let us see how it contributes to our economy. Bangladesh's 81% exports come from ready-made garment sector, and it employs about 20 million people right now. The country is in track of attaining a USD 50 billion export target by the year 2021. The country achieved a 5.81 export growth despite of all odds, which stands at a volume of USD 36.67 billion in the fiscal year of 2017-2018. We have a huge workforce as well, which is about 4.4 million at present, and mostly the average age of these workers are all under 40. Moving on, the factors that attract global attention to Bangladesh is the readiness of labor. And the biggest strength Bangladesh has is its cheap and the vast workforce. The minimum wage in Bangladesh is lower than that of China, Cambodia, India, and Vietnam. As I said, it has a skilled manpower for the segment with favorable government policies and bank facilities. In the next slide, you can see that the other factors of global attention would be the duty-free advantage, which is access to around 52 countries. And Bangladesh has also signed many trade deals like the SAFTA and the APTA and the Bay of Bengal initiative of multi-sectoral technology and economic cooperation. In the next slide, on the factors that attract global attention on the technology adoption, Bangladesh has attracted many major global retail brands with the technology and quality compliance parameters. Bangladesh manufacturers and exporters have built excellent vertical capacities, which only China previously could have, and it has an excellent supply chain policy as well. The country has henceforth adopted the most sophisticated apparel manufacturing and management technologies to cater to their international customers. Moving on to the next slide, what is holding us back is after the incident of a factory collapse about 5 years back, where about 1,100 people lost their lives, and there was an attack at a local bakery where about 20 plus people lost their lives in 2016. There were a lot of global attention on the country on security and safety standards. So the two incidents, but despite of the two incidents, the industry experts and the relative associations have taken measures which in line to international security and compliance parameters. So now it is resolved and we are seeing steady growth from there. The road ahead could be that the Bangladesh shoots bright and continues a steady growth despite of all odds. None of the companies working with the RMG producers in Bangladesh have withdrawn per se from the market after the incidents mentioned before, which shows positive intent and support of global manufacturing sourcing companies. In the next slide, I would like to just say what we do as a company at Lux Empire. We envision to take Bangladesh to the top echelon in the world of fashion. As the second largest garment producer in the world, Bangladesh is poised at the second spot due to its cheaper products. But we, as a company, have the expertise and manpower to attain the highest standards that the global fashion or ready-made garments companies seek. And that's why we are focusing mostly on services like brand styling of luxury items, fashion and lifestyle marketing, event-based branding, manufacturing, design, and sourcing of luxury clothing, accessories, and items. And in addition to that, as a promotion purpose, we also have a fashion platform and a magazine. So that pretty much sums up our role as a company. So I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Rusan. We really appreciate it, especially that it's 9:30 p.m. there in Dhaka. So you've got an evening calling in from. Our next and last speaker before we get to questions, and we're looking forward to hearing from him, Dr. Dirk Lindenbeck. Dr. Lindenbeck, you are in Charlotte, North Carolina. I think you're with Mark Lowson, our executive director there. You are the chairman of Stainless Valve Company, so we appreciate you taking the time today to tell us more about your perspective on emerging global trends, and particularly something near and dear to me because my grandfather was a German machinist. You're going to be talking about family-owned machinery firms. And so congratulations on your success, and we look forward to hearing more about your perspectives on the manufacturing trends there.
Thank you for your introduction, Doug. The Lindenbeck family members owning the company are my wife, Nora Lindenbeck, Axel Lindenbeck, Michael Lindenbeck, and myself. On my 65th birthday party, I told my sons in the presence of our friends that they have to run the business from now on. For 10 years now, I'm theoretically retired, but the sons keep me pretty busy with things which they want to have my help or advice. Please allow me to introduce to you B&E Manufacturing Company Incorporated. On 3/18/68, B&E Tool Manufacturing was founded as a manufacturing company using initially manual machinery and since the 80s, NC and later CNC equipment, vertical and horizontal milling and turning centers. B&E was purchased by the Lindenbeck family in 1987. This is the next slide. Stainless Valve Company, founded March 1st, 73, was purchased in 1990 by the Lindenbeck family. Stainless Valve Company develops valves for severe problem applications in the process industry. Stainless Valve has to date exported to 21 countries on 6 continents. Next slide, please. As a family-owned business, we face the traditional challenges of managing orders, workers, and capital. The current economic situation is adding raw material prices and government trade policies to our challenges. Our business is very capital intensive. Here is our largest machining center. Next slide, please. What are our challenges? The main challenge is always to get sufficient order entry. We are working with a network of agents who sell products compatible to valves. The selling action is much different from the big valve manufacturers in the USA and even more so in India and China. They are selling on a price basis. We are selling on a performance basis. Our experience allows us to solve severe service applications, resulting in lower cost of ownership. Next slide, please. The next challenge I want to mention is the availability of educated employees to manufacture our qualified products. We are working with the South Piedmont Community College on an apprenticeship program to help with the long-term supply of future manufacturing employees. We use a European model called the dual system. Well-trained and involved employees and self-control empowered employees guarantee our quality, which improves our ability to sell. The next slide, please. Number 3 is the availability of capital. In a small family business with no financial background, it is always difficult to navigate through the hills and valleys of order entry. Undoubtedly, having the USA market and also the export market helps to balance, but there is still huge swings in the order entry numbers. In that situation, the banks do not help. Best to minimize financing and move to organic growth. The inflation, the next slide please. The inflationary raw material prices in a materials intensive company are another concern. There is surely a connection between import duties and inflation. I will use an example of tariffs affecting the company which I was running in Brazil in the 70s and 80s. In 1973, the inflation was only 15%. Very high import duties were set with the effect that not only the quality of the products deteriorated, but also the inflation spiraled eventually in 1993 to 2,477%. Only when the currency was changed to the real and major cuts were made by President Cardoso, to the import duties, as well as the privatization of an important part of government-owned companies, did the economy recover. 22% inflation was measured in 1995, 2 years after the high. Import duties have one very undesirable effect. More money gets into the hands of the government, which instigates the government to wasteful money spending. Next slide, please. Government activities resulting in trade war is a big concern. I believe that the export is weak now because of insecurity created around the world. But being notorious optimists, we are somewhat confident that there will be sufficient intelligence in this country, that the negative excesses are going to be balanced, and the overall world economy will develop positive in the foreseeable future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dirk. We really appreciate that. Really good perspectives. And now we'll have time to answer questions. We've got a few minutes. And so some of the questions, they're a little bit all over. So let's see which ones. And anybody here, please feel free to interrupt and ask a question if you have one. One of the questions that come in earlier, and we may have missed an answer from France, so perhaps the rest of you can answer this. A lot of the changes that are happening in manufacturing and in industry overall, are kind of leaving people in the 40 to 60 plus range, maybe a little puzzled in terms of, hey, I'm being replaced by artificial intelligence, or I'm, automation or robotics is changing the plant floor completely, and my skills are no longer applicable. How are some of the changes that you're seeing out there? And Dirk, you might be able to start this one. Your industry, you've had to change and you've had to modify. How are the changes that you're making and the ones that you're seeing down the road impacting manufacturers like you?
We had to change an approach which I had in the beginning when we bought the business, where I decided to use only used machinery, which partly was about already 20, 30 years old at the time when I took it over with the purchase of the business. Meanwhile, my sons have had some additional and different thoughts about that, and they decided to buy several machines which are the newest and latest technology. This change has resulted in a considerable reduction of the manufacturing time of our valves. Typically, we had about 12 weeks manufacturing time. Now, with the modern machinery, we have brought that down to about 3 weeks. I think that is the major impact which we went through in the last 10 years.
I see. Very good. Thank you. Anybody else want to handle that question? Are you seeing, how are the changes impacting your business? And Nick, in your case, particularly when I think about, you've talked about Vietnam and China, but then we heard about Bangladesh, even though most of the activity was in the garment industry, and
Sure.
you do a lot in the furniture industry. Why didn't you talk about Bangladesh? And what are some of the things that are coming up that might make you think about other countries? You also talked about, I thought it was really interesting, manufacturing in China and then fabricating in Vietnam and then presumably shipping it out. So the dynamic cost and technology changes are impacting how you're sourcing.
Absolutely, yeah. So I want to tag. I'll address that and a comment on the previous comment about people getting older. The one thing that is rather interesting to address the previous person's question is that the younger people are growing up with this technology, with technology as part of their philosophy, but an older generation still is very, very important to the manufacturing process, because these equipment and this artificial intelligence require an understanding of the manufacturing process that is actually at a much higher level than when we were just running it on a factory line. So because the level of detail and precision has to be so exact, these people that essentially were experts at running a line or being a part of the manufacturing line actually play a very important role in the programmatic approach to going to artificial intelligence. And we found that there's an enormous value to those people that sort of understand how they could have put it together by hand or by using them, by using machines, by hand machines, and doing it sort of piecemealed, that as we start to go into larger manufacturing processes, their expertise is, irreplaceable. To address your comment about Bangladesh, the truth is, I don't really have a lot of resources in Bangladesh yet, but now I do. I have a great contact now, so thank you, sir. But yeah, we obviously are looking at any kind of source, any kind of resources. We already have a pretty heavy interest in moving towards India. We've looked at a few options there, but certainly post this conference, I will be doing some research on Bangladesh, and I know now somebody I can reach out to. As far as connections, yeah, the thing is, I think as we go through the ages, more and more of this stuff is going to come to what is the best place to manufacture it. Vietnam, China, Bangladesh, India, Europe, wherever it's best to be manufactured is the best place for us to get it. But we got to look at all aspects: cost, availability, resources, time. To put it all together in one package. That's what we got to do as global manufacturers. All of us here have to look at that whole paradigm. What's best for our customer? What's best for our bottom line? I mean, we're here to make money, right?
Absolutely. Could I follow up? Because there's another question that relates quality and inspection. Presumably products are coming off the line and someone needs to make sure that it's working properly, and that means that you need to have basically feet or eyes on the in the plant, either directly or indirectly through your own people or elsewhere. So how does that get managed in these days with technology changing?
So we actually use 3 different approaches. One, as I mentioned, we have employees who are there. Our large manufacturing runs, prototype runs and stuff, obviously one of our employees is there. But once we get to first article and subsequent manufacturing items, we actually use one of 2 other services. One, there's a great resource called basically inspection agencies, and we use 2 different inspection agencies in Vietnam and in China that actually physically go into the facilities, and they run us a very long, lengthy report about what they found. And I would say 9 out of 10 times they're actually more critical for the manufacturing process than my own employees are. They noted, a chair that came off the assembly line just last week for one of our projects that, the threads on the bottom that weren't cut right on like 2 chairs. Something that our guy, my team probably would not have noticed. But they were like, well, we're just going to report this back to you because, you're our customer. We want you to be ultimately impressed. And that organization that we're using, I think has offices in 50 something countries. So that's what we've been doing. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
What is that organization? The question here.
Oh, it is, I'll tell you, hold on. I'll tell you what the name of the company is. If somebody wants to jump in, I'll look it up for you.
Anybody else want to address that question or any of the questions that we've had so far? And in the meantime, I see, I think that's Mark Lowson.
The company we use is a company called SGS.
SGS, okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. The next question kind of relates to some of the dynamics that are going on in the world right now, and it probably relates to the tariffs and trade wars and kind of like what happens next. We did a manufacturing event a few months ago, and we talked about there were Japanese from company folks from Toyota, from Tokyo, mentioning about the Mexican elections and what was going to happen there, and that was going to impact Japanese and Asian investment in Mexico. And subsequently, that's been decided. The U.S. election is still coming up, and the Canadian election is still coming up. So there's a lot of still uncertainty that's going on. But where do each of you see things shifting over the next several years, given kind of the dynamics of that are happening in trade? Are Asians going to continue to invest in Mexico? Are U.S. companies going to ship more things overseas, or are they going to bring some things back to the U.S.? What are some of the dynamics that? I mean, take out your crystal ball and let us know what you think. Dirk, you're smiling, so I'm assuming that you have all this figured out. So we're all waiting with bated breath.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are watching already today a certain development which I find very interesting, since I am very much in love with South Africa, where I lived for 3 years. The development of the new Silk Road, which is built by China quietly. We only get more or less little bits and pieces in terms of information about all those activities. But the overall picture is very clear that China puts itself to become the world leader in manufacturing and trade. And we see that they invest a lot in Africa, and Africa really has been so far a big white blob on the earth where not much is going on in terms of manufacturing, and I think China will see to it that that changes.
Agreed. We had an event last week. I don't know if the blog post is up, but we had the Road and Belt Initiative, Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, and it's fascinating. What's happening there. So what else do you guys think about, Nick and Ruslan?
I'll just jump right in with my quick comment. I believe that particularly out of the manufacturing partners and the way we are looking at it, I think there's certainly going to be. I don't foresee the tariff war being as large and as complicated as I think maybe it could have potentially been, or maybe the media is turning it out to be. Candidly, I think that we are going to find a way to make this work. And truthfully, a lot of, I think when you actually look at how the laws are written and the way the intent of it is being projected and put together, it's going to affect a very small portion of the economy, and I foresee that the companies like countries like China are going to, and other Asian countries are just going to continue to want to be a part of the global economic climate, and and we're all going to find creative ways to make that work. I don't think that a set of tariffs or something like that is going to cause all this to come to a grinding halt. I do feel much more optimistic that actually, in turn, I think that maybe some things will come back to countries of origin for development. But truth be told, as an American and as an American company, we certainly see that the world is really getting to be a smaller place, not a bigger place, and that finding things and using technology effectively is certainly the most effective way for us to combat any of these issues, including the tariffs.
In your case, you're getting most of your product, maybe all of your product, from China and Vietnam, and so in that case, are you seeing tariffs that will impact that, or through the use of the free trade zones you're able to avoid that?
Through the free trade, through the narrow just how narrow those tariffs, the media broadcasts them as these very broad spectrums of tariffs. The reality is once you actually get into the logistics and the harmonized trade numbers that are associated with them, it's actually a relatively narrow scope. It certainly will affect some organizations. I personally are not seeing a lot of that at this time, and we do not anticipate that for any of our current clients or for our businesses. But I feel like it's sort of the people who maybe don't know enough about what is actually happening are making a bigger deal out of it than it really, I think it will turn out to be.
Okay, so you're anticipating then that very likely you'll continue to source from where you've been sourcing outside the U.S. and none of that
100%.
probably would want to, you wouldn't want to, or could you manufacture any of that in the U.S.?
I could. I'm probably not going to, though.
Mark, it looks like you want to say something. Go ahead. Hopefully we can get you without reverberation. Mark, you're muted. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
No, we won't be able to hear you because you must have two open in there. Is Dirk? If Dirk's in the room with you, then it's probably not going to work.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, please come over onto the camera with Dirk.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. That's much better.
I just wanted to expand on what Nick was saying about the effects of this trade war, because Shinzo Abe took the 11 remaining members of TPP and went ahead and produced a comprehensive and transformative Trans-Pacific Partnership, and just last week signed the largest free trade agreement with the the European Union. So you've got China embarking on BRI, you've got Japan, European Union, and the rest of the TPP signing major trade agreements. We are going to see that there are other ways that this trade can continue. Just one comment that I wanted to make in terms of the geopolitical aspects of what Nick was talking about. Thank you, and sorry for the muting problem here.
Yeah, no worries. There's certainly a lot going on, and I keep thinking about all that American beef that doesn't get sold in Japan because we're not in TPP. So there's pluses and minuses to every deal that you do, and that's certainly one of the minuses. We are at the end of our hour, so I apologize. We're going to have to cut it off there. There are a couple more questions, and so what we do in that case is we follow up with each of the speakers with questions. I had seen another comment earlier about getting in touch with Corinne separately because she had to leave earlier, so we'll do that. If you have any additional questions, please send them to info@globalchamber.org. We do this type of information sharing about global business every week. We don't expect our members to attend every single one, but we do hopefully hit some of the topics that are important for our members. And so if there's a topic that you would like to see, let us know. We have it kind of mapped out over the next 2 to 3 months in terms of what we're going to be talking about, but we can always add a few. I noticed that actually over the next month and a half, 3 additional Globinars were inserted into our calendar over the last week. So we've got a lot of different things going on. Hopefully not too much for you to handle. Don't feel bad if you can't handle it all. It doesn't all fit in the brain. We understand. Thank you for your support of Global Chamber and your collaboration, and have a great day. And Rasan, have a good evening. Sleep well.